Guys, welcome back to the Scrap Life Adult Side channel and another salvage auction analysis. This one is near and dear to my heart. I have been an FD RX-7 guy for nearly 20 years now. My first kind of official car was an FD RX-7, and these things have been in my life for 20 years now. I've had probably close to a dozen of them, and every single time I sell one for whatever reason, I always think it's going to be the last, and then I end up finding a deal on another one, like my current project right now that I am way too far into, but it's too far to turn back now. This particular car is a rare thing to see at Copart auction. We're gonna dive in, look at all of the photos, talk about the scenario, because this one's kind of unique for a very unique car. This thing's about to run in about 10 minutes, and you can see it is already bid to $32,500, which is just absolutely insane. It does look like a very nice car, but I'm going to explain why that's nuts here a little bit later in the video. As we scroll down, the first funny thing that I see is the clean wholesale value of $12,500. Yeah, that's about what it was probably 20 years ago. Everyone knows that these aren't there anymore, but when you log in on the actual computer, it gives you a completely different value, as you can see here, which is more reflective of what the market is right now. It is a California title. It says dismantle or dealer export only clean title, which is kind of interesting, but it also might tie into why this car is being sold at Copart. As we continue to scroll down, 1.3 liter rotary, manual, all of this isn't really anything too spectacular. We are going to copy the VIN for our history search. Looking at the pictures here, we'll go to the HD version. This thing looks pretty clean. As you get to the rear, again, just a clean car. One thing worth noting, this is a touring model. So it has a sunroof, as you can see up there. But this is not what they call a PEP, a popular equipment package. It does not have a rear wiper on it, which nowadays is more desirable. Nobody likes the rear wiper. And it also does not have the Bose entertainment system in the rear, which is known to fail. It takes up trunk space. Everybody dislikes it. You can see right behind where the shock tower is on the Bose cars, there's kind of this, almost, it looks like another shock tower that sticks up there, which is the top of the Bose system. So everybody does not like it and removes it. This car doesn't have it anyway. Over here on this side, I did notice that there's some sort of, it might be dust, dirt, it might be something actually in the paint. And then if we zoom in on the bottom here, it does look like a Racing Beat Cat Bat exhaust, which is completely fine. Nobody's gonna bat an eye at having one of these unless it was a ridiculously low mileage original example. This car though, being 95,000 miles, perfectly fine to see reliability mods on it. Coming around to the front here, that on the fender, maybe a scrape, it may be a reflection. I mean, the wheels look clean, just, you know, I guess right there under the mirror, maybe that's a scrape. Nah, I mean, it definitely looks like it could use a cut and buff, but it's a Copart salvage auction car, even though this one's clean title. And the front bumper here, one thing that the FD RX-7s have is that when they sit outside, especially on the dark colored cars, the support across under the bumper to the rebar, it's not completely solid. It has like 4 points that come up, like the foam, if I remember correctly. So when you have a dark colored car that sits in the sun, the bumper takes the form of what's underneath of it, and you get these like indents in them. This car looks pretty darn good. You see a small one up there past the emblem, but I'm gonna guess this car was probably stored at least under like a carport or something along those lines. Okay, keep going around. Again, everything looks pretty normal here at the front. Back to the rear again, not seeing anything jumping out at me. Into the interior, you can see this thing has tan carpet. In the 1994s, when you had different colors, which would have been tan and red interiors, it's just carpet and seats. The rest of the interior is black. In the 93s, the entire interior was whatever color it was. If it was tan, the whole interior is tan. Black is by far the most desirable. And in the 1994s, you could get away with having tan interior if it was seats and carpet because everything else is black. Same thing with red 94 and 95 interior, very, very in demand because it's extremely rare and it looks great because the majority of it is black with just a little bit of red accent. So these seats have been swapped out. You can see the tan buckle there that it looks like somebody painted. These to me look like they're aftermarket covers. You can see the shrinking of the insert there, and I can confirm that these are aftermarket because right here that looks like a vinyl side panel on the insert, and on the OEM covers they are top stitch with a single top stitch. So these are definitely aftermarket covers. Nothing wrong with that if they were in good shape, but they're not in good shape. Everything in this interior looks OEM. It is running in the pictures. It does have the right gauge cluster. The 94s, for anybody that's asking, the dashes are different. The overall interior is upgraded. It's better quality plastics. They're textured plastics. It does have a passenger dash airbag, which the 93s did not, and the glove box is different as well. And then on the gauge cluster, the tack has less little slashes in it. If this was a 93 between 3,000 and 4,000 RPMs, it would have 10 little slashes. It has smaller ones for each 100 RPM. On the 94s, they did away with that and there's more spacing. You can see good oil pressure there. It's almost out of gas, and this thing looks like they just fired it up. There's zero temperature, but 95,000 miles, which nowadays is pretty darn good for these cars. Over here on the passenger side, again, I'm not seeing anything that is jumping out at me as weird or different or wrong. It really looks like a pretty correct car. A couple things missing in the engine bay: the battery cover, which is almost always missing. That just kind of gets taken off and sat off to the side, and then it goes missing. The cover at the front here, you can see they kind of put something over the hole in the intercooler because there is a cover that comes over and ducts air for the factory intake, but this thing doesn't have a factory intake, which is completely fine. Again, reliability mods are fine. It does have a metal air separation tank, which again, good reliability mod. Nothing wrong with that. Looks like it might have a vacuum hose job also, as you can see those blue vacuum lines there. So somebody, put a little bit of effort into this thing. Really, there's nothing about this car that looks bad except for the fact that it's at a Copart auction. I don't think that this is the spot to sell the car, but let's look at the auction history and then we'll see ultimately what it runs for. Over on autoauctionhistory.com, let's pull it up. And it's got nothing. Absolutely. Oh, hold on. What is this right here? The pictures didn't load up and it looked to be flat tire. Let's look at the lot number, 7632. This is a different lot number. So this thing has been through the auction before. All right, it's about to run. Let's hop in, let's see what it does, and then we'll do some more digging. I did have some minor interest in this car if it was staying down in the lower $20,000 range, which it's clearly not. We'll see how much action it gets, but in my head, with this thing being at salvage auction, I didn't get a chance to look at the VIN completely. It says it's a clean title. If there was accident history, then that would change things. But in this day and age, clean, titled, decent condition, rolling chassis that don't have a driveline at all, but have interior and body panels are $15,000 to $20,000 pretty much at least. So in my head, you have to go into it thinking that the motor is potentially no good. And if this thing checks all the boxes that we think that it's going to check, where it is a clean title, no accident history, all that type of stuff, then I think this is going to get pretty wild here because people are going to pay money and you're going to get up into the realm of what is retail money. If this was on Bring a Trailer or eBay, a better selling platform for this car, and this being on Copart, the buyer is assuming all the risk on this car. So I can't justify the money, but we're going to see what it does here. It's next up. Here we go. Maybe it's already high enough.
Sold on approval.
All right, there you go. Absolutely no action on it. It pre-bid up high enough, $32,500 going to Nevada. Now, it's too much money for me. All in, you're going to be $35,000 plus shipping on it. Again, that's creeping up onto retail money, and the buyer is assuming the risk. If this was on eBay, for example, you can message the seller, hey, do you have compression numbers for the motor, so on and so forth. You don't have that reassurance with a car through Copart. It could have a bad motor. It could be running. It could be barely running. You're assuming a lot of risk, and for pretty close to retail money, I think that is a little bit too much risk. But I want to pull up and just Google the VIN on this car, see what comes up with Google, and see really where that takes us. So this is going to give us some other auction information other than what we saw. The big thing for me is that this is showing the original location was Van Nuys, California, and this one sold through Sun Valley. So this thing did move as far as being at another auction. It looked worse in the pictures. We're going to have to go back to auto auction history. It has a flat tire. The mileage, I think, is pretty close to the same. Under the hood looks pretty close to the same, except for whatever that is on the shock tower. Rear bins. The car itself looks like in worse shape, like presentation-wise, where it's just looks like it sat outside. I feel like somebody definitely went through and cleaned this thing up in the newer auction photos. And maybe that was it. Maybe they bought it. Let's go back, because I don't remember seeing a sale date. Yeah, see, the history on this car is really, really weird because it doesn't have any final bids. So even if it was a buy it now, it would have a final bid for whatever it's sold for, and we don't have any of that. So it's really confusing. It makes me wonder if whoever listed this car for sale pulled it from the auction and wanted to present it better, which is never a bad thing, but seeing another listing for it is weird. I'm sure some people out there just have access to Carfax and things along those lines. There's the VIN for the car. Somebody run the VIN for me. I don't have like unlimited Carfax. I'm curious if this thing has any accident history. So if there's somebody that can run it, and just comment down below and just say if it has any accident history on it. I think that's it though for this FD. The only other thing to note is that this was sold on approval. As you saw, all that means is that the seller is going to either approve or deny it once the auction is completed. It is entirely possible that meets the number that they wanted to sell it for, but it's different than if a seller has it on reserve. If it's on reserve, they list the number with Copart. Once it reaches that number, it changes to pure sale. When it's on approval, it just means that they're going to look at it one way or another. So for Copart, if they didn't take that, I think that they're pretty crazy. But at the same time, weirder things have happened. So we'll keep our eyes out. We'll see if that thing pops up at some other point. But that's going to do it for this salvage auction analysis. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, if you know anything about that car or have Carfax, accident history, anything like that, I'm curious the backstory on that car and ultimately why they decided to sell it at Copart versus a better median, in my eyes, where a clean title car should be sold. So again, hopefully you enjoyed this salvage auction analysis. I have a couple more really, really cool cars coming up later this week. I've been enjoying doing a lot of these, and I think the viewers have been enjoying them too. Been getting good reactions on these videos. So I'm going to keep doing them. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.